Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into a story that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie, but it's happening right now, for real, in Egypt. We're talking about a breakthrough that could completely rewrite the rules of farming by turning saltwater into a life source for our most important crops.
I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. What if we could take one of the most common things on our planet, salty, unusable water, and use it to grow something like wheat? It just seems impossible, doesn't it?
Well, you know what? It's not impossible. We're going to zoom in on one specific place, the 6th October farm in Egypt. They took that wild question and turned it into a massive real-world experiment, and the results were just incredible.
Okay, so to really get why this is such a huge deal, you have to understand the problem they were facing. For pretty much any farmer on Earth, the quality of your water is everything. And salt is the #1 enemy. The entire challenge here boils down to one number, 5,000 parts per million. That's how salty their water was. Now, to give you some perspective, for a crop like wheat, that much salt is usually a complete deal breaker. We are talking about water that is basically useless for agriculture.
So the team set up this really brilliant head-to-head comparison. On one side, you've got the control group, wheat getting irrigated with fresh, clean water from the Nile River, and on the other side, the test group getting irrigated with that super salty 5,000 ppm water. The stage was set for a pretty epic showdown. So how in the world could they possibly make this work? Well, the answer is in this really fascinating piece of tech they installed on their irrigation system. And this is where the story gets really interesting.
The technology is called magnetic water treatment, and the system they used from a company called Delta Water does something kind of counterintuitive. It doesn't actually remove the salt. Instead, it runs the water through a powerful magnetic field. And somehow, this process changes the water's properties so the plant can absorb nutrients way more efficiently, even with all that salt floating around.
All right, so the experiment's up and running. Salty water versus fresh water. Everybody's holding their breath to see what happens. And the results, well, they were nothing short of astonishing. I think this quote from the farm's own engineer, Ibrahim Abdali Adi, just says it all. When they went out and actually compared the wheat stalks, they just couldn't believe their eyes. The parts of the plant you can see, the heads, the spikelets, they looked almost exactly the same. It was like the salty water was performing just like the fresh water. And that right there was the first massive breakthrough. They achieved total parity above the ground. Despite being fed water that should have killed it, the wheat looked just as healthy, just as productive as the stuff grown with perfect Nile water. Just an absolutely mind-blowing result. But as amazing as that was, the biggest discovery wasn't something you could see just by looking at the field. To find that, we've got to dig a little deeper, because the real secret to all this success was happening underground. That's right. To really figure out how this was even possible, the team had to look at the plant's foundation, its root system. And this is where the power of that magnetic treatment really truly revealed itself. What they discovered was that the treated water was actually stimulating a much stronger, more widespread root system. The plant basically turned into a more efficient machine, able to hunt down and pull in the nutrients it needed despite that harsh, salty environment. And that stronger foundation, it led to everything else. Taller plants, longer stalks, and just better, healthier plants all around. Now, a stronger plant is fantastic news if you're a biologist, right? But if you're running a farm, the big question is always, what does this mean for the bottom line? And this is where the story gets even better. The economic wins were huge, and they came in a few different ways. First, the total dry weight of the plants went up, which for them means more high-quality animal feed. Second, they actually used less water overall, and third, they needed less fertilizer. It's just this amazing domino effect of positive results. When you look at the numbers, they tell a really powerful story about efficiency. The farm saw this major drop in how much water and fertilizer they needed. So think about that. They weren't just growing an identical crop with terrible water. They were doing it while using fewer precious resources. So, let's put it all together. The bottom line is crystal clear. You get a higher crop yield in the form of feed. You're saving a ton of money on water and fertilizer, and now you can take those savings and cultivate even more land. It all just adds up to a much bigger economic return. It's a massive win for productivity and for sustainability.
So, what started as a bold experiment on a single farm in Egypt now sparks a much bigger conversation.
We've seen the proof. We've heard from the engineer on the ground. So, what does this all mean for the future of farming globally?
And that really is the big question, isn't it? With fresh water becoming more and more scarce all over the world, could a technology like this be the key? Could this be how we unlock these enormous reserves of currently unusable water to help feed a growing planet? Based on what happened in this one field in Egypt, the future of farming suddenly looks a whole lot different.